Well, good afternoon to you, Scott Baker.
Mikey, how are you?
Great. Thank you. How are you today? You have a different setting.
Pretty good. Yeah, a lot of motorcycle magazines behind me here at the Video Editing Complex. This is where we create a lot of the admired leadership magic. It's just, and it involves motorcycles. We have thousands of field notes, right? Today, in
Yep.
fact, is field that we're talking about is field note number 1621. The headline of which, by the way, is Take Projects Apart to Develop Delegation Skills. And then we have these thousands of these, and then you and I have been doing these conversations for a couple of years on X, and in the new format that we've done 150 or so, that would be hundreds of hours that we have done of these conversations, analyzing the field notes. And then we have the really good stuff, like we have the things that actually describe our admired leadership behaviors. And we have, I don't know, like 120 of those videos that are done, and they're in audio form, and they're for people in our playbook platform. And that's where it just gets really amazing. Now, my point is this: I've been working on this stuff for 7 or 8 years. There's a lot of moving pieces in how we do the interviews and the way we shoot video, the way we record audio, the way we edit. And if you asked me, could I get help with this? I would say, yeah, that'd be great. And then I probably would be terrible at trying to get other people to help me in a way that helps them and helps me, because I'll be
Yes.
like, well, no, and I'll want to hold on to it. I'll be like, no, it's not quite that. It's got to be this way. So I would like you today to help fix me as we analyze this field note.
Yeah. Well, let's just understand why it is that you have a hard time letting go. And it's not necessarily something that I am making an excuse for you, but you should be proud of the idea that the reason that you would have a hard time letting this go is because you have a very specific point of view and a very high standard when it comes to that point of view. And so anyone who's in your position will justify all kinds of ways to not delegate, because they've seen 98% of the population who've tried to do what you're doing fail at it, and therefore they don't want to delegate it to a 98% failure outcome. Right?
Right, yeah. Now, I would like to spend as much time as possible in our conversation with you dwelling on the nature of my high standards.
Right.
and in my desire for excellence and all of this. But what we see is the problem here, which is nobody who's excellent at anything got excellent by just magically being excellent. It required hours and hours and years and decades of being less than excellent to get closer and closer. I also know, and spent all morning with our editor, Jesse, looking at videos and thinking, okay, that worked pretty well. And I also know, looking at these things, there's a next coming generation of learning and the technology of that learning that I actually know nothing about,
Right.
or that I will not be expert in. So the capacity for any of us to be in a continual dialogue with what we know and what we don't know, and how we work with those around us to say, let me tell you a little bit about what I know, and then you're going to tell me just by your own actions, I'm going to learn from that. But let me do this in a way, as the field note talks about, where rather than me saying, I'm going to put some new video editor or new interviewer, a new producer in charge of an entire modular program, I'm going to say, let me have you work on this one thing. Let me have you watch me with this. Let me have you do this part. Let me break this down into the 43 different segments that happen in the way that this procedure comes. And then as you get better at each part, I will feel more comfortable, and I will have done something way more valuable than actually the product itself, which is the transfer of the magic of making something cool to another person where they can then have that pleasure.
Right. So you pointed out probably the behavior of the best delegators that we see. The best ones are the type of people who are teaching everywhere and about everything that they encounter. So if someone is riding along with them, they probably don't perform any part of a task or a project or perform in some meeting without taking time to teach others what they were thinking when they did it, why they did it, and allowing them to have some hands-on, time in the middle of it. And so, if you're a plumber or a craftsman or a carpenter, then, those types of people who are teaching everywhere they go are probably the best kinds of delegators. And oftentimes in a trade like that, it's probably the best kinds of leaders who are constantly being the kinds of folks that teach. But even in coaching situations, you could find it the exact same way.
Yeah. Well, and over the years, you and I have talked about certain examples, either from your background experiences or mine in this regard. But you pointed to one thing even when you said trade, which is there is an element where we understand the idea of apprenticeship or mentorship in sort of the things that have a physicality to them, a real world Adam nature, like whether it's cooking or whether it's painting or whether it's doing work on a ranch or different pieces of plumbing, those kind of things. It gets a little fuzzier when we get into these areas where if I'm working with somebody around how I work with other people, right?
Yes.
And sure enough, I mean, the profession of sales has a long lineage of what it's like to work in sales and how you move somebody towards something that is the best outcome for them.
Yeah.
Sure, but that's where it also starts to get, again, a little bit odd, right?
Yeah, it does. Because
it's a little harder to wrap your mind around.
For reasons that you're saying, I might find myself, as in my dad role in life, constantly bringing a kid with me to do whatever I'm doing.
Yes, right.
And then always just being in the normal mindset of like, whatever it is I'm doing, a third of it is going to be something that I'm going to be teaching, and then having them do hands-on in whatever way.
Well, we've pointed out the example, by the way, that on that specific thing, how somebody noticed that Prince William, who someday we'll call King William, unless there's a radical change in the way that Great Britain decides to position the monarchy, that he makes sure that his son is just with him, around him, when he's having conversations with world leaders.
Right.
From when he was very young, right? Not that a 6-year-old, or I don't know how old he is now, can really grasp all the complexities of it, but it was just be watching, just be aware, just feel the rhythm, feel the way of going about this and how those interactions unfold. There's something beautiful about that.
Well, the reason that we might be apprehensive to just allowing that to be the type of skill and the way that you do it as it transfers into the workplace is that we have this apprehension around being too parental. Like I don't want to be too parental in the hallways of the office. I don't want to come across as everybody's dad, right, in the office. So I'll have the tendency to tamp down my teaching nature in a professional environment.
Sure, yeah.
And that's probably a good instinct for me to kind of tamp down that dad nature of myself.
Yeah, and that is the truth, because when I'm down the hall at our company meetings from you, and I'm hanging out with all the cool kids and we're smoking on the back loading dock, and when we hear that you're coming down the hallway, we're like, quick, everybody, quick, Dad's coming.
Right.
Like we do straighten up pretty fast.
Yes. It's always, I avoid the loading dock for that very reason.
Good, yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's tricky then. Like we're pointing out the idea that some of these natural things that you do in one area of your life, you may be turning off like some of the natural inclination of some of your better instincts, right? As a leader in an organization, you should be looking to teach people in every way that you're, and if you're worried about being parental, then figure out the behaviors of how the best leaders do it so that you don't come across parental, but are still able to delegate in everything that you do, right? And here's one way to kind of break it down, right? And which is really the crux of the field now, right? If you're having trouble or if you're having issues, so we mentioned the self-conscious nature of why you might be worried about it. There might be some fear involved. There might be such a high standard of excellence that you're just hesitant to be able to do it. Step number one is pretty simple. Most of the tasks that you would in an ideal world love to be able to delegate, why not take time to break those down into their subroutines first?
Right.
Think about them that way, and maybe it'll become quite obvious to the parts that you are comfortable delegating out.
Yeah. Well, and there's an interesting element to that, because I remember, let's wind back, 35 plus years. When I was a teenager, Tony Robbins was first kind of coming on the scene in the self-improvement world. And he was one of the ones who was then really talking about this idea that there were specific steps and that you could break down excellence into really small categories. And that then you could say, well, let me work on these 11 things. And if this person is doing that, I could then learn to do it by studying them. This is just the inverse of that. Right? Now, I've often talked about this fact that there are people that are sort of by personality and disposition and just wiring that are more generalists, which generally most people in the population are. And often those people that are managers or in different kinds of leadership positions often have that characteristic. People that are specialists, that are writers or video editors or they're even coroners or homicide detectives. They have a very specific skill set around a specific thing. All of a sudden, I got very dark there. I went from coroners to homicide detectives. Yes, there's a lot of very specialist skills. So in that, the specialists are the ones that tend to have the harder problem. And we've talked about this. People that were great newscast producers tend to be terrible executive producers because they can't let go. They know they could do a better job than this other person. But I would say that if you're re-engineering it the other way and saying, I pursued excellence by following these sub-skills and these sub-steps, I can delegate by understanding the same way. And if I actually think about this idea, if I think I'm a specialist, maybe I start to think about the idea of delegation as a specialist skill. And that is what it is, which is you need to start thinking about not, I got to turn this project over to people, but I have to appropriately select targets within that category of all of the aspects in the right way, to the right person, with the right cadence, in a way that doesn't destroy their time and doesn't destroy my time, or I bring somebody else in to coach them on that particular point. I think this is all very doable. And again, I think it's actually it doesn't diminish the quality of the ultimate product. You start to expand yourself. And as the field note says, you're carving out greater time for yourself to deal with the things that only you can do. And that's really important.
It really is, because if you're going to expand your role as a leader, if you're going to have some upward trajectory inside of your organization at all, you have to be this way. You have to get to the point where your leadership will change. Now, your style might always kind of be the same, but what you're doing needs to be more expansive. Your pronouns need to be more about using the royal we more often. You need to be thinking less about your team and more about the entire organization. And people will not even recognize that you're ready to take that next step until you're able to think more globally inside of your organization. So if you're so focused on the excellence of your task and you're not willing to train others to do that in an excellent way, you're really hemming yourself in. You're not giving yourself the opportunity to be as upwardly mobile as you think that you want to be, right? No one's going to pluck you out because of how excellent you are. Some people might fail upward, right, in that kind of way, but you don't want to be part of that, promoted up to the highest level of your incompetency kind of crowd. You want to be able to prepare yourself. And so create the capacity inside of your own day-to-day routine where you have the ability to become the next type of leader that you should be.
Yeah. By the way, do you know who is really good at using the royal we? Prince William.
Like every time he says it.
Does it all the time.
Every single time he says
they're like, it's so wild how you use that royal, but in the fun of this, and I was thinking about this, I don't know, this morning, again, the non-trivial nature of not only each field note, free to the world, 185 countries, and all of the people that read it, and you and I talking about them each day. And I just kept thinking about what could be more fun in the world than to really start to explore and understand and feel these things so deeply that they become just a part of how we go about doing things. And so I was thinking about just this fact about what's the process of doing these videos? Where am I failing? Where could we be doing better? Where should I be spending other time? And I was realizing, there's still a huge gap, even at this point in my career, of what I need and could get better at doing. And that's kind of the excitement for all of us, and all of the content that we have in Admired Leadership is not that you face that as an indictment, but that you see those gaps as real opportunities. That's sort of the definition of potential. All of those things in the future, everything out there that lies in front of us that we can move ourselves toward and move other people toward, because leadership is about making other people and situations better.
Fantastic way to end this. Thanks very much. We'll talk again tomorrow as we meet here every day for 15 minutes, and we hope you as the viewing audience will join us then too.
Yeah, and the topic is, I don't know. It hasn't been written.
We don't know yet. But we'll talk tomorrow. All right, bye now.
Be fun to